She had learned to make herself invisible, eyes down, voice soft, existence small. But when Greg's hand clamped around her wrist and dragged her toward the bathroom, invisibility shattered. And the man in the corner booth, the one with winter gray eyes and hands that had ended lives, saw everything. The restaurant hummed with the kind of wealth that whispered rather than shouted. Crystal chandeliers caught the amber glow of evening, scattering light across white tablecloths and the faces of people who never checked price tags. In the kitchen's controlled chaos, Liora moved like a ghost, silent, efficient, unnoticed. She preferred it that way. Her dark hair was pulled back so tight it made her temples ache, but loose strands always escaped, framing a face she'd learned to keep blank. 23 years old, and she'd mastered the art of disappearing in plain sight. It was safer that way, safer than the foster homes, safer than the streets she'd briefly known at 16, safer than being seen. Table 7 needs water. Greg's voice cut through her thoughts, sharp, always sharp. The restaurant manager had a smile for customers and venom for staff, especially her. Yes, sir. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. She lifted the crystal pitcher with both hands. It was heavy, and her wrists were small, and made her way through the tables. That's when she felt it. The weight of a gaze. Corner booth. Back to the wall. He sat alone, in a $3,000 suit that fit like a second skin. Tall. Even sitting, she could tell. Broad shoulders that filled the space with a quiet, dangerous authority. His hair was dark, touched with silver at the temples, and his eyes, God, his eyes, gray like a winter storm, sharp enough to dissect her from across the room. Leora's breath caught. She looked away quickly. Men like that didn't look at girls like her. Men like that owned places like this. His name was Cassian Volkov, though she didn't know it yet. And he'd been watching her for 20 minutes. The way she flinched when Greg barked orders, the way her hands shook slightly when she poured wine, the way she made herself small, as if apologizing for taking up space. He'd built an empire in shadows, controlled territories most people didn't know existed, ended threats with a phone call or a nod. But something about the girl with haunted eyes made his jaw tighten. He took a slow sip of his whiskey, waited. Have you ever felt invisible in a room full of people? Drop a comment below. I read every single one. It happened during the dinner rush. Liora was balancing 3 plates when Greg's hand shot out and grabbed her elbow. Hard. The porcelain rattled, nearly slipping from her grip. You forgot the garnish on table 12. His breath smelled like coffee and rage. I'm sorry, You'll fix nothing. His fingers dug deeper, and she felt the bruise forming in real time. You cost me a complaint last week. I'm done with your incompetence. Her heart hammered. Please, I need this job. Should have thought of that before. He yanked her toward the back hallway, away from the dining room's warm lights, away from witnesses. Mr. Patterson, please. Her voice cracked. The bathroom door swung open. He shoved her inside. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, sterile and cold. Liora stumbled against the marble sink, catching herself with trembling hands. The door clicked shut behind them. You think you can just exist here? Greg's voice dropped low, venomous. Pretty little ghost, floating around, making mistakes, costing me money. I'll work harder, I promise. Tears burned behind her eyes, but she fought them. Don't cry, don't give him that. He stepped closer, too close. You know what your problem is, Liora? She pressed back against the sink. Nowhere to go. You think being quiet makes you safe. His hand reached for her face. Outside the bathroom door, Cassian Volkov stood perfectly still. He'd followed the moment he saw Greg's hand on her arm, followed the fear in her eyes, followed the way she'd whispered please like a prayer no one had ever answered. His men knew that tone in his silence, the one that came before violence. Through the door, he heard her voice, small, broken. Please don't. The door handle turned under his grip, slow, controlled. Then he stepped inside. Greg spun around, irritation flashing to confusion. This is the women's restroom. You can't. Cassian's eyes swept the scene in a single devastating glance. Liora pressed against the sink, tears streaking her face. Greg's body blocking her exit, the finger-shaped marks already darkening on her arm. When Cassian spoke, his voice was glacier cold. Take your hand off her. The temperature in the room dropped 20 degrees. Greg's face went from red to white. Do you know who I know exactly who you are, Greg Patterson. Age 38. Lives at 4257 Maple Street, apartment 2B, divorced, 2 DUIs you paid to disappear, a gambling debt of $43,000 to some very dangerous people. Cassian took one step forward, just one. Would you like me to continue? Greg's hand fell away from Liora like she'd burned him. Cassian's gaze never left the manager's face. Walk out of this restaurant, get in your car, drive until you hit the state line. If I ever hear your name in this city again. He smiled. It was the most terrifying thing Liora had ever seen. Well, let's hope you're smarter than you look. 30 seconds later, Greg was gone. The bathroom fell silent except for Leora's ragged breathing. Cassian turned to her slowly, and his expression shifted. Something in those winter gray eyes softened, just barely. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a pristine white handkerchief. For your tears, he said quietly. She stared at him, still pressed against the sink, her whole body shaking. Who are you? Someone who doesn't like bullies. He set the handkerchief on the counter between them, careful not to invade her space. You're safe now. I just lost my job. Her voice broke on the last word. No, Cassian's jaw tightened. You just became unemployed by a coward. There's a difference. Something about the certainty in his voice made her believe him. What's your name? He asked. Liora. It came out as a whisper. Liora. He repeated it like he was memorizing it. I'm Cassian. She didn't know why she asked. Maybe it was shock. Maybe it was the way he'd appeared like an answer to a prayer she'd been too afraid to speak. Why did you help me? Cassian was quiet for a long moment. When he finally answered, his voice carried a weight she didn't understand yet. Because someone should have helped you a long time ago. Liora didn't go back into the dining room. She gathered her things from her locker with shaking hands. A winter coat, 2 sizes too big, a small backpack with a broken zipper, and the $17 in tips she'd made that night. $17. It had been a good night. Had been. Now she had nothing. The alley behind the restaurant was dark and smelled like garbage and rain. She leaned against the brick wall, letting the cold seep through her thin uniform. The city stretched out before her, 1,000 lights in windows she'd never enter, lives she'd never live. You shouldn't be out here alone. She jumped. Cassian stood at the alley's entrance, hands in his pockets, looking entirely too calm for someone who just, threatened her manager, saved her, both? I'm fine. The lie tasted bitter. You're not fine. He walked closer and she noticed he moved like water. Smooth, deliberate, dangerous. You're unemployed, clearly underpaid, and judging by that coat, you don't have anywhere warm to go. You don't know anything about me. I know enough. His eyes caught the streetlight. I know you've been running from something for a long time. I know you're alone. And I know that right now, you're trying to figure out if you can make rent this month. She hated that he was right, hated how easily he could see through her. Why do you care? The question came out sharper than she intended. Cassian was silent for a moment. When he spoke, his voice carried something she couldn't name, regret maybe, or recognition. Because I know what it's like to be invisible, to survive instead of live. He pulled out a business card, held it out to her. I own a hotel downtown, the Apex. I need someone to manage the front desk evening shift. It pays triple what you made here. Liora stared at the card, like it might explode. I don't accept charity. It's not charity, it's a job. His expression didn't change. You show up, you work, you get paid. That's how employment works. Why would you offer this to me? You don't know me. Maybe I want to. The words hung in the cold air between them. Leora's fingers twitched toward the card, then pulled back. Everything in her life had taught her that when something seemed too good to be true, it was. Men like him didn't help girls like her without wanting something. What's the catch? Her voice hardened. Cassian's expression flickered. Was that hurt? It vanished so quickly she might have imagined it. No catch, just a job. You need one. I'm offering one. He set the card on the dumpster beside her. Think about it. The offer stands until tomorrow night. He turned to leave. Wait. The word escaped before she could stop it. He paused, looking back. Why did you really help me tonight? Cassian was quiet for a long moment, and something ancient and painful crossed his face. Because no one helped my sister when she needed it. His voice was barely above a whisper, and I've regretted it every day since. Then he was gone, disappearing into the city like smoke. Liora stood alone in the alley, the business card gleaming in the dim light. She showed up the next evening. The Apex Hotel rose 30 stories into the sky, all glass and steel, and the kind of elegance that made Liora feel small. But she'd spent the previous night in her cramped studio apartment, staring at her bank account balance and the eviction notice on her door. Pride was expensive. Survival was practical. The lobby was breathtaking. Marble floors, gold accents, a chandelier that probably cost more than she'd earn in a lifetime. Behind the front desk stood a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and perfect posture. "You must be Liora." The woman smiled. "Mr. Volkov said you'd be starting today. I'm Margaret. I'll be training you." He told you about me? Just that you needed a fair chance." Margaret's eyes twinkled. "And that anyone who gave you trouble would answer to him personally." The shift blurred by, checking in guests, managing reservations, learning the computer system. It was overwhelming, but Margaret was patient, and for the first time in years, Liora felt capable. She didn't see Cassian all evening. At 11 p.m., as her shift ended, Margaret squeezed her shoulder. "You did wonderfully, dear. Same time tomorrow?" Liora nodded, exhaustion and relief mixing in her chest. She was gathering her things when the elevator doors opened. Cassian stepped out and the air changed. He still wore a suit, charcoal this time, but his tie was loosened and there was a shadow of stubble on his jaw. He looked like he'd been in meetings for 12 hours straight. Their eyes met across the lobby. "You came." He sounded almost surprised. "You offered." She lifted her chin slightly, trying to project confidence she didn't feel. "I needed a job. And Margaret says I didn't completely embarrass myself." The corner of his mouth twitched, almost a smile. High praise from Margaret. She has standards. An awkward silence settled between them. Liora shifted her weight, suddenly aware of how her cheap shoes looked against the marble floor. "Thank you," she said quietly, "for this, for everything." Cassian's expression softened in that way it had in the bathroom, like he was seeing past her walls to the scared girl underneath. "Have you eaten?" The question caught her off guard. "What?" "Dinner. Have you eaten?" He checked his watch. "The hotel restaurant is closed, but there's a diner 2 blocks from here. Best coffee in the city. I should get home." "When's the last time you had a real meal?" Liora. The use of her name did something to her pulse. She wanted to lie, wanted to say she was fine, that she didn't need anything from him. But the truth was, she'd been surviving on instant ramen and vending machine snacks for 3 days. Yesterday, she lied anyway. Cassian's eyes narrowed slightly. He didn't believe her. "Humor me. 1 cup of coffee, then I'll have my driver take you home." "Your driver?" "I don't usually drive myself." He said it matter-of-factly, like everyone had drivers. Safety precaution. That should have been a red flag. Should have reminded her that she knew nothing about this man except that he was powerful enough to terrify her former manager with a few sentences. But she was tired and hungry, and for reasons she couldn't explain, she felt safer with Cassian Volkov than she had in years. "1 coffee," she agreed. His smile was subtle but genuine. 1 coffee. What would you do if a stranger changed your life in a single night? Would you trust them or run? Let me know in the comments. The diner was the opposite of the Apex. Worn vinyl boots, fluorescent lights that flickered, and the smell of coffee that had been sitting too long. But it was warm, and the waitress smiled when they walked in. "Usual spot." "Mr. V?" she called out. "Please, Betty." They slid into a corner booth, and Liora realized this wasn't a random choice. "Cassian came here often. You're a regular at a place like this?" She couldn't hide her surprise. "Best coffee in the city," he repeated. "I meant it." Betty appeared with 2 mugs and a pot, pouring without asking. "The special tonight is meatloaf, but I'd go with the chicken pot pie if I were you." 2 pot pies, Cassian said. When Liora opened her mouth to protest, he added, "You can take yours to go if you want, but you're eating." Betty winked and disappeared. Liora wrapped her hands around the warm mug. You're very bossy. I'm decisive. There's a difference. Is that what they teach you in whatever you do? Cassian's smile faded slightly. What do you think I do? She met his eyes. Something dangerous, something that makes managers run scared and gives you drivers for safety precautions. He didn't deny it, just took a slow sip of coffee. Does it bother you? He asked finally. I don't know you well enough for it to bother me. She paused. But I'm not stupid. You're not just a hotel owner. No. His voice was quiet. I'm not. The honesty surprised her. My family came from Russia 3 generations ago, Cassian continued, eyes distant, built a business in imports. Over time, that business evolved, became something else, something that operated in shadows. The Mafia. She said it flatly. That's the word people use. He didn't flinch. I prefer to think of it as providing services the law can't or won't. That's a convenient justification. It's an honest one. His gaze returned to her, sharp. I've never pretended to be something I'm not, Liora. I've hurt people who deserved it, protected people who needed it, built an empire on fear and respect. I'm not a good man. Then why help me? The question hung between them like smoke. Cassian was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. When he finally spoke, his voice was raw. I had a sister, Katya. She was like you, soft, kind, saw the best in people even when they showed her their worst. His hands tightened around his mug. When I was building my empire, I was never home, never there. And one night, her boyfriend, a piece of shit I should have buried the first time I met him, he hurt her, badly. Leora's breath caught. By the time I found out, by the time I got to the hospital, his voice cracked. She was gone. And the last thing she said to me was, I called you. Why didn't you answer? Tears burned in Leora's eyes. I'd been in a meeting, making money, building power, and I let my phone go to voicemail. He looked up at her, and his eyes were haunted. So when I saw Greg put his hands on you, when I heard you say, please, like you'd said it 1,000 times before and no one ever listened, I heard Katya. Liora reached across the table without thinking. Her small hand covered his. I'm sorry, she whispered. I'm not telling you this for sympathy. His voice steadied. I'm telling you so you understand. I don't want anything from you, Liora. No expectations, no strings. I just want to be the person who answers when someone says, please. The pot pie arrived, steaming and perfect, but neither of them moved. What was she like? Liora asked softly. Katya. Cassian's expression transformed. For a moment, the dangerous man disappeared, replaced by a grieving brother. She laughed at everything. Terrible jokes, bad movies, her own clumsiness. She wanted to be a teacher, loved children. He smiled sadly. She would have liked you. How do you know? Because she had a gift for seeing people's hearts, and yours is beautiful, even if you've spent years trying to hide it. Something in Leora's chest cracked open. They talked until 2 a.m. Not about the mafia or the restaurant or the violence that had brought them together. They talked about small things, books, childhood memories, the strange comfort of rain against windows. Liora told him about foster care, about being moved 17 times before she aged out of the system, about learning to pack her entire life into a backpack because nothing was permanent. Cassian told her about growing up with a father who measured worth in fear and a mother who died too young, about taking over the family business at 25 and realizing he'd inherited both an empire and a cage. Do you ever regret it? She asked. The life you live, every day. He didn't hesitate. But regret doesn't change the past. It just haunts it. That's depressing. That's honest. He smiled. But lately I've been thinking there might be a difference between the life you've lived and the life you could still live. What changed? His eyes found hers. I met someone who reminded me what hope looks like. Leora's breath caught. The moment stretched, fragile and infinite. Then Cassian's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his expression darkened. I have to go. He stood, pulling out his wallet. Cassian, my driver will take you home. He'll be outside in 2 minutes. He left $300 bills on the table for a $30 meal. Be safe, Liora. Wait, She stood too, suddenly desperate not to let him leave. Will I see you tomorrow? He paused at the door, looking back. Do you want to? The question was simple. The answer wasn't. Yes, she whispered. Something fierce and tender crossed his face. Then you will. He disappeared into the night, and Liora stood in the empty diner, feeling like her life had just tilted on its axis. Betty appeared with a takeout box. He's a good one. That Mr. V doesn't let many people in, but when he does, she smiled knowingly. He'd burn the world down to keep them safe. Liora thought about Katya, about pleas that went unanswered, about a man who carried his sister's ghost like a second shadow. Yeah, she said softly. I'm starting to see that. The driver, a quiet man named Roman, drove her home in a black SUV that probably cost more than her yearly salary. He waited until she was inside her building before driving away. Liora climbed the stairs to her apartment, unlocked 3 different locks, and stood in the doorway of her tiny studio. For the first time in years, it didn't feel like a prison. It felt like a place she might actually leave behind. 3 weeks passed like a dream. Liora worked evenings at the Apex, growing confident behind the desk. Margaret became a friend. The other staff treated her with kindness. She'd never had that before, a place where she belonged. And Cassian. Cassian appeared every night, sometimes for minutes, sometimes for hours. They'd drink coffee at the diner, walk through the city streets, talk about everything and nothing. He never touched her beyond an occasional hand on her elbow, never pushed. But the way he looked at her, like she was something precious and breakable, made her feel seen in a way she'd never experienced. She was falling for him, terrifyingly, completely falling. Then came the Thursday that shattered everything. Liora was organizing reservations when 2 men in federal badges walked into the lobby. We're looking for Cassian Volkov. Her blood went cold. Margaret's face went pale. He's not here. We know, but she is. One of the agents looked directly at Liora. Liora Chen, we need to ask you some questions. They led her to an empty conference room, closed the door. How long have you been working for Mr. Volkov? 3 weeks. I work the front desk. And in those 3 weeks, has he asked you to do anything illegal? Deliver packages? Make calls? No, I just check in guests. You're aware that Cassian Volkov is under federal investigation for racketeering, money laundering, and conspiracy to commit murder? The room tilted. What? The agent leaned forward. He's dangerous, Miss Chen. And if you've been helping him, willingly or not, you're in danger too. We can protect you if you cooperate. I don't know anything. Her voice shook. You've been seen with him multiple times, late at night, private conversations. The agent pushed photos across the table, her and Cassian at the diner, walking through the park, standing close outside the hotel. We're friends. Men like Volkov don't have friends. They have assets. The agent's voice softened, almost kind. He's using you, sweetheart. Whatever he's told you, whatever he's made you feel, it's manipulation. That's what men like him do. Liora stared at the photos, at Cassian's face in each one, the way he looked at her, the almost smile, the softness in his eyes, she thought was real. Was it? I want to leave, she whispered. You're not under arrest. But Miss Chen, the agent stood. When this all comes crashing down, and it will, you need to decide which side you're on. They left her alone in the conference room. Liora sat in the silence, feeling her world crack apart. She confronted him that night. Cassian walked into the lobby at 11 p.m. like always, and Liora stood from the desk, her whole body rigid. Federal agents came to see me today. He froze. What? They said you're under investigation, racketeering, money laundering, murder, Cassian. Her voice broke. Is it true? His jaw tightened. Liora, is it true? Parts of it. He moved closer, but she stepped back. Pain flashed across his face. My businesses aren't all legal. I won't lie to you, but I have never put you in danger. They have photos of us. They think I'm involved, that I'm helping you. I'll fix this. I'll tell them you know nothing. That's not the point. Tears streamed down her face. You made me feel safe. You made me feel like maybe I could have something good for once. And all this time you were just, what? Easing your guilt over your sister? Using me to feel like a better person? No. His voice turned fierce. Don't you dare cheapen what's between us. What's between us is a lie. She was shouting now, and the lobby had gone silent. You're a criminal. I'm a girl you felt sorry for. That's all this is. You know that's not true. Do I? She laughed bitterly. I don't know anything about you except you're dangerous, and I was stupid enough to trust you. Cassian's expression shuttered. When he spoke again, his voice was cold, the voice of the man who made managers run. If that's what you believe, then there's nothing more to say. He turned and walked toward the elevator. Cassian! His name escaped like a sob. He didn't look back. The elevator doors closed, and Liora collapsed against the desk, Margaret's arms immediately around her. Oh, sweetheart, Margaret whispered. What have you done? Liora didn't show up for her shift the next day or the day after. She stayed in her apartment, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment with Cassian, searching for the manipulation, the lies. But all she found were memories of kindness, of a man who listened when she spoke, who remembered she liked her coffee with too much cream, who asked about her childhood like it mattered, who looked at her like she was worth protecting. On the third day, Margaret showed up at her door. You can't hide forever, child. I'm not hiding. I'm thinking. You're sulking. Margaret pushed past her into the tiny studio. And wasting time. Margaret, that man is many things. Some of them dark, some of them dangerous. Margaret turned to face her. But when he looks at you, I've worked for Cassian Volkov for 15 years. I've seen him negotiate with killers, dismantle rivals, and make grown men weep. And I have never seen him look at someone the way he looks at you. The FBI thinks I'm a criminal. The FBI thinks everyone associated with him is a criminal. They've been trying to take him down for a decade. Margaret's voice softened. But here's what matters. Do you think you're involved in anything illegal? No. Do you think he would ever put you in real danger? Liora thought about Cassian stepping into that bathroom, about him offering her a job with no strings, about him sharing the most painful part of his past because he wanted her to understand him. No, she whispered. Then what are you really afraid of? The question hung in the air. Liora sank onto her second-hand couch. I'm afraid that if I let myself love him, I'll lose him. Everyone I've ever cared about has left. Foster parents sent me back. Friends moved away. I learned not to hold on because it hurt less when they disappeared. Oh, honey, Margaret sat beside her. That's not living. That's just surviving. It's safer. Safe isn't the same as happy. Margaret took her hand. That man would tear this city apart for you. The question is, are you brave enough to let him? Liora thought about Cassian's face when she called what they had a lie. The hurt, the anger, the way he'd walked away instead of fighting. She'd spent her whole life being left behind. Maybe it was time to be the one who fought to stay. That night, she went to the Apex. The lobby felt different, colder, emptier, even though it looked exactly the same. Margaret was behind the desk and smiled when she saw her. He's upstairs, penthouse, private elevator behind the staircase. He won't want to see me. Then he'll throw you out. Margaret's eyes twinkled. But somehow, I don't think he will. Liora's hands shook as she stepped into the private elevator. The ride to the penthouse felt endless. When the doors opened, she stepped into an apartment that stole her breath. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the city, modern furniture, art that probably cost millions. And Cassian, standing at the window with his back to her, silhouetted against the lights. I told security not to let anyone up, he said without turning. Margaret has a spare key card. Of course she does. His voice was flat. What do you want? Liora, to apologize. Now he turned. He looked exhausted, shadows under his eyes, stubble heavier than usual, his shirt wrinkled like he'd worn it for days. For what? His tone was careful, guarded. For being scared. For saying what we had was a lie when I know it wasn't. She took a step closer. For not trusting you when you've given me every reason to. The FBI can investigate all they want. I'm not involved in your business, and you know it. They're trying to pressure me into something that doesn't exist. Another step. But I let them get in my head. Let them make me doubt you. Doubt us. There is no us if you don't trust me. I do trust you. Her voice cracked. I trust you more than I've ever trusted anyone, and that terrifies me because everyone I've ever trusted has left. I'm not everyone. His expression softened just barely. I'm the man who would burn this entire city down before I let anyone hurt you again. I know. She was close now, close enough to see the pain in his eyes. And I'm sorry, I made you feel like you were just easing guilt. You're not. You're the first person who ever made me feel like I deserve to take up space. Cassian's jaw worked. You do deserve it. You deserve everything. Then give me a chance to deserve you. The words hung between them, fragile and desperate. Liora. His voice was rough. My life is dangerous. The FBI wasn't wrong about that. And if you stay, if you choose this, choose me, there will be complications. Fear, risks. I've been afraid my whole life. Maybe it's time I'm afraid with someone instead of alone. Something broke in his expression. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides, his hands framing her face with a gentleness that contradicted everything dangerous about him. Are you sure? He whispered. Because if I let myself have you, I won't let you go. Promise? Her voice was barely audible. Promise. He kissed her. 3 months later, spring arrived in the city like a promise. The FBI investigation quietly closed. Not enough evidence, the official statement said. Cassian's lawyers were better than their case. But Liora knew the truth. He'd made deals, called in favors, moved pieces on a chessboard she'd never fully see. And she was okay with that, because some darkness was necessary to protect the light. She stood in the Apex lobby, now promoted to assistant manager, watching Margaret train a new evening receptionist. The girl was young, nervous, with eyes that looked like she'd been running too long. Liora saw herself in those eyes. You're going to be fine, she told the girl gently. This is a safe place. The girl nodded, uncertain but hopeful. The elevator opened, and Cassian emerged, immaculate suit, confident stride, but when his eyes found Liora, everything softened. Ready? He asked. Almost. She finished showing the new girl the computer system, then grabbed her coat. They walked out into the evening together, his hand finding hers automatically. It still sent electricity through her. That simple touch, the weight of being chosen. Where are we going tonight? She asked. Somewhere new. A gallery opening, but... He paused on the sidewalk, turning to face her. I have something for you first. He pulled out a small velvet box. Liora's breath stopped. It's not what you think, he said quickly, reading her expression. Not yet. But someday when you're ready, I hope it will be. She opened the box. Inside was a delicate bracelet, simple silver with a single charm, a tiny key. A key? To the penthouse, to the Apex, to... He met her eyes. To whatever future you want to build. You're not locked in, Liora. You can leave whenever you want. But if you stay, I want you to know you're not trapped. You have the key, always. Tears blurred her vision. She threw her arms around him, and he caught her, like he always would. I love you, she whispered into his shoulder. I love you, and it scares me, but I'm done running. I love you too. His voice was fierce against her hair, and I promise you'll never have to say please and wonder if anyone's listening, because I'll always answer. They stood on the sidewalk as the city moved around them, 2 people who'd found each other in darkness and chosen to walk toward the light together. Behind them, through the Apex glass doors, the new girl watched with wide eyes. And maybe, just maybe, she believed that safe places existed after all. Weeks turned to months. The gallery opening became dinners, became weekends away, became late nights in the penthouse, talking about everything and nothing. Liora learned the edges of Cassian's world, the parts that were dangerous, the parts that were necessary, the parts that were simply human. She met his people. Roman, the quiet driver, who became a friend. Margaret, who became a surrogate mother. Others whose names carried weight in shadows. And slowly, carefully, she led him into her world too. The fears, the scars, the parts of herself she'd learned to hide. One evening, sitting on the penthouse balcony watching the sunset over the city, Cassian handed her an envelope. What's this? Open it. Inside was a deed to her apartment building. Cassian, you said everyone you loved left, that nothing was ever permanent. His voice was gentle. Now your home is yours. Permanently, no landlord, no eviction notices. It's yours. She couldn't speak through the tears. And when you're ready, when we're ready, we'll find a new place together. But until then, you have roots, real ones. Liora looked at the man who'd dragged her out of darkness, who'd given her safety and choice and love in equal measure. Have you ever met someone who changed everything? Someone who made you believe in second chances? Drop a heart in the comments if this story touched you. And tell me, do you believe love can bloom even in the darkest places? I love hearing your thoughts.